What's up everyone, this is Rich with Lifetime Shred, and in today's video I want to talk about what my experience was like owning the Rivian R1T electric pickup truck, and more specifically what it was like towing a wakeboard boat with it and all the experiences around that. There's tons of videos on YouTube I think that go in depth on the Rivian R1T itself, so I'm not trying to double up on those efforts, but I wanted to specifically give some context around towing a wakeboard boat and ultimately my experience with the truck and ultimately why I don't own it anymore. So let's get into it. So a little bit about my history with the Rivian. I was aware of the truck, when they announced it, and was very excited about it, but I didn't put a pre-order in until 2021. And ultimately I had an opportunity in June of 2022 to take delivery, which was super lucky because that was kind of just a couple months after they started doing deliveries. And luckily I had kind of aligned my order up with what was being produced in the factory. Prior to owning the Rivian, I've had boats since about 2015, and I've most of the time towed with different Volkswagen Touaregs. So I've had an 06 V8 gas Touareg. I've also had a 2012 diesel Touareg. In the fall of 2021, though, I purchased a brand new 2022 Axis A22, which really excited about the boat, but with that came a heavier boat. I went from 3,600 pounds in my old A22 for dry weight to 4,500. And with gas and gear and everything else, most people would put the estimate on the new A22 to be about 67 to 7,000 pounds. And for the Touareg, I just thought it was a little bit too much, so I went looking for a new tow vehicle. I ended up in a Ram truck for a few months, and then the Rivian opportunity pumped up. And I couldn't turn it down because when my pre-order was, I was able to get the Rivian at the earlier pricing, which made it a no-brainer. So getting into what it was like to actually own this truck, tow with it, etc. So the overall towing experience was amazing. This is a 7,200 pound truck. It's a smaller package, so it's going to tow well, stop well, no weird roll around the highway or anything like that. And then also, since it's a smaller vehicle, like backing up into spaces was a little bit easier than it would have been in, say, when I had that Ram truck. Not quite as easy as the Touareg. And just some other things about the towing experience. Getting on and off highways was exciting. Getting on, you had this crazy acceleration if you needed it. Like, insane. I can't even describe it. I know there's videos of like Rivians or Tesla Cybertrucks towing things and beating gas pickups and drag races. Like, yeah, it's real, definitely real, and definitely awesome. The other thing I really liked about the Rivian with towing is you can raise and lower the vehicle. So especially backing into my driveway in my house, the driveway has a little bit of a ramp, and what I've discovered is sometimes the trailer, and since I've kind of put a little ramp to avoid this, but if you don't have the ramp there, the trailer can actually drag in the back, even though it has these caster wheels. I don't like it, doesn't sound good. But with the Rivian, I could actually lower down the vehicle, which would pick up the back end of the trailer to get it in. So that was a really cool feature as well. One big problem I experienced towing though, and I think it had to do specifically with my trailer. So the Rivian R1T does have an electric brake controller, but I just happen to have had ordered my Axis with a surge brake system instead of an electric brake system. And what I found is with the Rivian R1T, you can't turn off the regenerative braking, and something between that and the combination of the concrete highways we have here that have those seams that are evenly spaced, I was getting some hopping of the trailer because I think what was happening is the regenerative brakes were engaging, that combined with the highway was engaging the surge brakes. So what I ended up having to do when I towed it a couple times on the highway is I actually had to lock out the surge brakes on the trailer using one of those little magnet pieces. Now, while this wasn't ideal, I don't tow very often. And to give a little background around how much I tow, the lake I go to is about 30 miles from my house up in the mountains here in Utah, and I actually pay for storage there for the summer. So my boat's sitting in a fenced-in area. I drive my tow vehicle up with gas, fill the boat up, on land, launch the boat, ride, pull the boat out, wipe it down, take it off, and leave. And when I had the Rivian in the summer of 2022, it was awesome because gas was really expensive that summer, and I would tow up there, I would hitch on, drop the boat, etc., and it did all that great, and I wasn't really towing a lot, and I was getting way cheaper transportation than I would have had in a gas truck. Getting into the range of towing with a Rivian. So my experience, like I said, most of the time I just go to the lake and back and I'm not towing, but I did tow out to the dealer a couple times, which is about a 30-mile drive from my house, but on a flat highway. And on that trip, I just saw I was getting about 1.1 to 1.2 miles per kilowatt hour, which is actually pretty good. This is about 40 to 45% degradation over normal mileage of 2 miles per kilowatt hour, which is comparable or actually better than a lot of gas or diesel trucks. So that was pretty awesome. Now, when you hear these numbers, you can do some calculations. So let's look at total range for the Rivian for towing. And let's go with the 1.1 miles per kilowatt hour just to make a little bit safer assumptions here. So the total battery size in the Rivian R1T pickup truck is 135 kilowatts. If we take 135 multiplied by 1.1, we get 148.5 miles of tow range. Now, you're never going to drive an electric truck 100% of its range without charging somewhere because you don't want to risk getting stuck. Thinking realistically, let's do 80% of that, so a little 10% buffer on each side. And you're looking at about 119 miles of range. And in that situation, like let's say you charge up your truck all night and it's at 100% and you're driving it down to 20%, that'd be pretty normal. You could push it if you're just doing a round trip back to your house, maybe to 90% of the total range, and then you'd be looking at around 135 miles of range. But realistically, if you're on a road trip or something, that's not going to be possible. And another thing I would call out too is if you are on a road trip, you're really never going to charge a Rivian above 80% at the fast chargers. It just takes so long to go from 80 to 100%. It takes way less time to get up to 80. So even more realistically about range, let's just say 70% of that total. So that situation would be starting 80% and driving down to 10%. And if we do that, we're really just seeing about 104 miles of range based on 1.1 miles per kilowatt hour. So if you're going to go road trip with a Rivian while towing, just know that you're just looking at a little bit over 100 miles between stops at superchargers. So maybe that works for you, but most likely I'm going to say it's not going to work. And another thing I just want to call out too that's unfortunate right now is the charging infrastructure is just starting to grow. Like if you have a Tesla, great charging infrastructure. If you have any other EV, you're relying on Electrify America and some of these other new charging companies. So as I said before, if you're on a road trip, I wouldn't expect much more than 100 miles of range when towing from charge to charge, because towing up to 80%, maybe driving down to 10%. And you might actually only want to drive down to 20%, and then you're under 100 miles per leg. So definitely something you want to be thinking about. All this said, if you truly are just towing to your lake and back, and it's under 100 miles round trip, and actually if you're charging at home, I'm going to say let's go back up to that 80 to 90% of total range usage on the battery. I mean, then you're talking about 120, 130 miles of range. So for me, like the furthest tow I've done is from where I live to a lake to the north called Willard Bay, and that round trip was around 110 miles. And starting from my house at 100% range, it was totally fine. But I really couldn't go to any lakes beyond that. Thinking about cost too, again, it's all about use case here. If you are going from your house to a lake and back to your house and you're not stopping at a supercharger, you're going to save a ton of money because your home charging rate, like in Utah here, 11 cents per kilowatt hour, is probably going to work out to be way less expensive than gas. But if you are going to superchargers, you're going to be paying a lot more. And there's a lot of great videos on YouTube that actually show if you compare gas mileage to EV mileage, if you're only charging at superchargers like Electrify America and others, that you're actually going to be paying more per mile driven in an EV than in a gas vehicle. So that's something you want to think about as well. Another thing I would just call out about charging as well, if you do need to go along the way, is most, if not all, EV charging stations are not pull-through. So if you're towing, you're going to have to unhitch your trailer, block it off, go over, charge, and hitch back up. So as you can see, I'm kind of painting a picture here. local usage of an EV pickup truck to tow, pretty awesome. Saving a lot of money. Anytime you're dealing with superchargers and multiple legs, not good. I personally wouldn't do it. And this kind of gets into some of the reasons I decided to sell my Rivian. So, I loved driving it. I loved the savings I was getting going to the lake to drop in my boat, etc., etc. And yeah, the vehicle drove amazing. But when it really came down to it, I decided to sell it. So I'm going to get into that for a second. So something I haven't mentioned yet is I made a stupid big mistake, and a couple months into owning my Rivian, I backed up into my wife's car in the driveway. I've never done anything like that before. Maybe I was just too excited. I mean, the Rivian by far is the most expensive vehicle I've ever owned, so of course I was gonna ding it. And I dented in the back rear quarter panel, and unfortunately, to get that fixed, it took me an entire year of dealing with body shops and Rivian and getting parts in. It was a very frustrating experience, and I will call out that during that year, I didn't even have my truck for 7 months. But I will also say Rivian actually did give me a loaner for 3 of that 7 months, which was nice. But the other part of it, I did not have a tow vehicle, so I did not have my Rivian all of summer 2023. And I wasn't going to miss my wakeboard season, so I decided to buy a 2016 Ford Expedition in June of 2023, and that was my tow vehicle to get me through because I couldn't use the loaner vehicle from Rivian to tow, and I also couldn't use rental cars to tow, and I need to go wakeboarding because I love it. That's why I have this channel, right? So not having the Rivian for a while because it was, again, Rivian / the body shop had it for 7 months, I started thinking a lot about what I wanted to do with my family going forward and talking to my wife. And one of the things we started talking about, partially because some of our good friends, the Pools, they have a little travel trailer that they brought down to the cable park a few times in Colorado. And I was like, oh, that is so cool, especially with little kids. I was like, yeah, but towing, I did all the math that I've already done in this video. I was like, it's not going to work with the Rivian. And if I want to do those things, I'm going to have to go back to gas or deal with a massive pain in the butt, which I just wasn't going to deal with, especially with little kids. And, not having my Rivian that time kind of opened my eyes to maybe for my use case, I loved the local to the lake and back with the Rivian, but it wasn't going to fulfill any kind of road tripping. I could never take my boat to Lake Powell or go down to St. George in the spring to ride or get this travel trailer and go down to Amondi's or drive out to Sacramento. It just wasn't going to work out. So that was the main reason I sold the Rivian, is that it just didn't meet the use case for my family anymore of wanting a trip that we could road trip with. Just to summarize it, overall, towing with a Rivian, the actual driving experience is pretty amazing. The surge brake thing on your trailer, something to be aware of. Driving the vehicle itself, it's an incredible vehicle. If you do want to road trip, though, and specifically towing, I don't think it's a good option. I would stick with a gas or even better yet, a diesel vehicle for towing in those instances. If you're just towing locally and you have no plans at all to ever road trip and your lake is less than 100 miles round trip or 110 miles round trip, it's awesome. You're going to save tons of money with an EV. It's going to tow great. You're going to love it. Do I regret owning the Rivian? No. I got a good price on it. I was able to experience it for a bit. I was able to sell it and not take a massive loss, and that was pretty awesome. And yeah, I might own a Rivian again someday. I don't think I will own an EV as a tow vehicle anytime soon, but definitely for daily driver, would 100% consider one again. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful. Again, this is Rich with Lifetime Shred. If you're interested in wakeboard content like this, don't forget to subscribe and set your notifications. I won't be making a ton of content till spring kicks off, but there should be a few videos popping up maybe every few weeks to like about once a month. Catch you later.